Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. Means we're brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Jacob Beck, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, fired up. You are here with us. We have got plenty to do today. Usually Luke Johnson with us on Thursdays. He's got OTA duty, so we're going to talk to Luke tomorrow on our Friday shows. I do have some Saints topics I want to get into. Joe Healy, Highway to Hoover podcast. Of course, more professionally known as the guy with the SEC Extra over at D1 Baseball. We'll talk about what happened in the regional round and then preview the super regionals. Are the Saints the least likely team to go worst to first in the NFL this season? We'll get into a little bit of that. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, at 2:15. And they've already got odds out for Paul Skenes' next team. I guess we'll do some of that as well. Lock us in for 2 hours. We'll crank things up the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, I made you a promise yesterday, and I kept it. Went home, got dinner cooked, got the kitchen cleaned up, got the kids in the bathtub, got them to bed. Wife went and watched whatever horrendous television she watches in the back there with Bravo and drunk, famous, rich women yelling at each other or whatever's going on. I locked it down. I sat there at the kitchen counter, fired up the laptop, and learned everything I possibly could about West Virginia's baseball team. And now I will tell you all the stuff that I learned. If you'd like it in written form, it's already up at louisianasports.net. Got a full preview there, but we'll kind of go into it as I see it. Big picture. Before we get into records and statistics and names and deliveries and pitches and all that kind of stuff, big picture. West Virginia, solid baseball team. West Virginia, not a scary baseball team. That does not preclude them from coming to Baton Rouge and winning. I just don't fear really anything that West Virginia has. They're solid. They're good at a number of different things. Nothing strikes fear. Like, Oregon State's welcoming in Florida State. You got to deal with Jamie Arnold on the front of that rotation. Like, that is scary. Tennessee is going to Arkansas. You got to deal with Baum Stadium, 15,000. You got to deal with the SEC Player of the Year, the number one offense in the league. Like, there's some fear factor there. I don't have much of that with West Virginia, but they're good. And I'll tell you what they're good at. First of all, they're veteran, and they have traveled all over the place. They have won 24 road games this year. That's the most in college baseball. When you add in their 3 neutral site wins to get to 27 wins away from their home ballpark, that's more than the total amount of home games they've played this year. So they have traveled. Now, a lot of those wins are against teams that you won't have a lot of respect for, and that's fine. It's just a statistic. They've traveled a lot this year. Look at what they did in the Big 12. They got out to an incredible start to the season and in conference play. They were 13-0 after 13 games and 34-4 after 38 games. They swept Cincinnati, who's a regional team, and they were, a highly ranked team that was in control of the Big 12 and looking at a top 8 and certainly at a host. But they did not handle their business down the stretch. They lost 5 of their last 6 league games. They stumbled in the tournament, and that knocked them down because of their strength of schedule out of the hosting picture. Now, they're the Big 12 champions, and that's a great thing. It's a real league, and they won it, and they deserve credit for that. However, they got some breaks in scheduling. Listen to this. They won the Big 12. Second place was Kansas. Kansas swept West Virginia. Third place was TCU. West Virginia did not play TCU. Fourth place was Arizona. Arizona played a 3-game series against West Virginia, and in the conference tournament, Arizona won 3 of 4 against the Mountaineers. And then you did not play Arizona State. So against teams 2, 3, 4 in your conference, and 5, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you were a combined 1 and 6. And you didn't play 2 of them. So It was a break in scheduling, and they took advantage of it. Now, let's talk about their team, okay? That's how they got here. The starting pitching at the top is a strength for West Virginia. Absolutely. Is it terrifying? No. Is it a strength? Yes. Griffin Kern is going to start on the mound for West Virginia. I studied him pretty hard last night. Division II transfer from Quincy University, got a shot at the power conference level, took advantage of it. 5-3 with a 3.13 ERA, big picture this year. What strikes me is not Kern's stuff. It's not his measurables. It's not the metrics on his pitches. What strikes me about Kern is his consistency. He never had a bad start all year. The most runs he gave up in a single start all year was 4. He did that twice. 16 starts, he only did that twice. He gave up 2 earned runs or fewer more than half of the time. So in 10 outings, 2 or fewer runs. I think that's really good. Now, he's a left-hander, not overly big, like 6'1", and he's got a herky-jerky, bouncy wind-up. It's real herky-jerky, and there's a lot coming at you real fast. And because of that, there's some deception. He only throws 91 miles an hour. But Kentucky, who does not strike out very much, had some trouble with his fastball because it jumps on you because of the delivery, some deception, and there's some ride on it, and it's only 91. His off-speed stuff, I could not figure out. He does not throw, best I can tell, a traditional, like, hard slider or curveball. He'll throw a sweepy slider that breaks a lot horizontally, and he'll throw some change-ups. I didn't find any of it to be plus, but it's effective because he's not getting hit a lot. So the repertoire is not eye-catching. The numbers really are. And one of the things that is so impressive to me is that he has been a workhorse for them down the stretch. 127 pitches 3 times out ago. 129 2 ago. 118 against Kentucky on Friday. By the way, his 118th pitch was 92, which was higher than most of his fastballs for the day. So workhorse, and he threw 118 pitches on Friday, came back on Sunday and closed the game. So this is not a guy that I think has a pro future. This is a guy that's a workhorse, and that he'll go out there, I'm sure, on Saturday, the first game, and they're going to leave him out there until they can't do it anymore. And he's been good all year. Now, the number 2 starter, Jack Kartsanis, looks like if I told AI, build a pitcher for West Virginia, this is what it would spit out. He is 6'4", 220 pounds, big old boy, and the mustache is elite. We're talking a big old around the mouth mustache that's like full. And he comes out there and he's throwing it hard. He works out of the stretch as well. Same thing. And his stuff's more traditional. 94, 95, a little bit of sink on the fastball and a traditional like sharp slider. And he's been their number 2 starter since mid-April. He was a reliever. They now use him as a starter. Last week against Clemson, pretty good environment. He actually faced the home team. Kern did not. Kern faced Kentucky twice, but Casanos faced the home team and was pretty good. He worked into the 6th inning, 5 1/3, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk, only allowed 2 earned runs. He's big boy, got firm fastball, but not a first-round pick by any stretch of the imagination. Those 2 guys are good. Kern, Kartsanis, very, very good. The bullpen, as you heard yesterday from our guest, has been way overused. And that showed up in the regional and really showed up down the stretch as they got beat in the last 2 series, the Big 12 tournament. The guy they go to constantly is Reese Bassinger. He has made 29 relief appearances. He's got 5 saves. That leads the team. Listen to this jarring number. In the regional, he pitched on Saturday and Sunday. He pitched 3 2/3 innings and gave up 13 hits. 13 hits and a walk. He's a funky right-hander, 3/4 arm slot, sink-in stuff, not overpowering. They just love to use him because he throws a lot of strikes generally. It's 91 miles an hour, and he's getting hit a lot over the last 3 weeks. The other guy they go to a lot is Chase Myers. He's a more traditional reliever, more traditional windup, 94, 95 fastball, sharp slider, but He's tired too. 10 earned runs in his last 8 Big 12 innings. He also walked 2 and hit 2 in 1 inning against Clemson. They had a big lead on Clemson. They brought in Myers, and he couldn't throw it over the plate. He walked in 2 runs. He snapped off a breaking ball that hit a guy. He threw a wild pitch. He's tired. He's erratic. His walk numbers are high. LSU has to get to these guys. As long as Kern and Kartsanis are in the game, West Virginia feels good. You start to get to these guys in the bullpen, they're out of gas, I think. I mean, they could get a shot of life from a 13,000 Alec Box crowd maybe, but it's also going to be 95 degrees out there. So I think these guys are tired. I think their stuff is average, and I think LSU's got to get into the bullpen to deal with these West Virginia arms. It's again, solid 1-2. Bullpen, I think, is tired. Let's talk about the offense for West Virginia. You know what? I can do that in the next segment. We've already gone 11 minutes here. We don't have a guest in the next segment because Luke's not coming on. I can bump Saints back a little bit. And let's get into West Virginia's offense and some more keys. Since I'm going to make it into 2 segments, let me circle back real quick to one little nugget to put in the back of your mind that's certainly in mine right now. Bassinger and Myers are the 2 relievers I just told you about with West Virginia. They're both right-handed. Kern is left-handed, who's going to start, I believe, on Saturday. He's their ace. That means Josh Pearson's probably going to start. If you can get Kern out of the game and get to one of these guys, that's a spot for Jake Brown. I'm fine if he starts the game, trust me. I know Matt will yell and scream in the next show about it, and that part has been said, and that's all fine and dandy. I'm trusting the staff there. But I'm just telling you that if they do what they've usually done and Pearson starts against the lefty, watch for Jake Brown. Huge pinch hit opportunity late in the game on Saturday against one of these 2 relievers. That's something to very much file away. So that's a look at West Virginia from a staff perspective. I want to talk about the offense and how LSU matches up. There's something very interesting about what West Virginia did last week when they faced a big-time lefty arm. So we'll do that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. When you think Genesis of Baton Rouge, think luxury line of vehicle. When I say luxury vehicle, like you probably think a couple things. 1, the brands that you've grown up with. And 2, I can't afford that. Well, wait a second. You don't know that. Genesis is a luxury brand at a reasonable price. Go by and see them at the dealership. Just have a conversation. That part, I know you can afford. It's free. Chat with one of their brand ambassadors. Say, here's kind of what I'm looking for. Show me around. They will. Entry level, highest end, sedan, SUV. See what it's about. Depending on what your family looks like, what your fit looks like, and where you are in your car buying process. They will help you out. You will feel like a guest and not a customer at Genesis of Baton Rouge. So go by and see them, Airline at Pico. Tell them Hunt sent you in there. And just chat with one of their brand ambassadors about what they have to offer. The odds are you have not been behind the wheel of a Genesis. Change that in the coming weeks. Go see them or visit them online, genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
All right, our Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms. Y'all are answering the call, and if you want some of the best beef in the country, I would suggest you grab the old cell phone out and get ready, because I'm going to give you Sean Sagrera's number here, because you're going to want to get in line. I know that we told you about their Memorial Day sale up there at Sagrera Farms. They were selling those 2-pound bags of the best ground beef you will find. And y'all answered the call. They blew through 600 pounds up there at Sagrera Farms, 55 new customers. And right now, if you want to get in line for some of the best beef in the nation, just outside Baton Rouge, that you can go drive and pick up, you're going to want to hear about this, because there are 10 animals right now that are starting that 45-day aging journey. And in those 45 days, you're going to want to get in line to grab some of them. If you're looking for ground beef, if you're looking for fillets, if you're looking for strips, ribeyes, flanks, whatever the case may be, he'll cut it any way you want it cut. Talking about the Denver cut, talking about skirts, they got it. If you want to get in line, give Sean a call. 719-1723. It's 1723. Only prime steaks. It's in the top 1% in the country, and it's right outside of Baton Rouge. They bring you our shows each and every Thursday. If you're looking to get out on the grill some steaks, grill some burgers, Sagrera Farms is where you need to be picking up that beef. Give him a call. That's Sean's number, 719-1723. All right, we talked about the pitching, so let's talk about the other side of things with West Virginia here. What stands out with their lineup is its length. It's not a lot of star power. They don't have anybody that's going to go in the top 50 picks of the Major League Baseball draft. They don't have, they had J.J. Weatherholt the last couple of years, who was a first-round pick at second base, left-handed bat, great player. They don't have anything like that, but they've got a lot of good hitters, and that's why they win a lot of games. You run through some of their statistics as it relates to the Big 12, which I think is a fair thing to do. Third in runs, fourth in hits, third in doubles, fourth in on-base percentage, fourth fewest strikeouts, third in hit by pitch. So top four in all those categories that have to do with finding holes, getting hits, getting on base, putting the ball in play. That's what they're very good at. They do not slug. 11th in the Big 12 in home runs, 11th in slugging. The only player on that roster that had double-digit home runs is Kyle West, and he had 10. In the regional, they went to Clemson. They won 3 games, swept through it. They hit 1 home run. They just don't do that a lot. They have 2 total home runs in their last 6 games. So they are built on creating a lot of innings and manufacturing runs with multiple hits, with stealing a base, with dropping a bunt, with finding a hole, with grounding to the right side. And that, to me, seems like a tall order against guys that strike out as many hitters as Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson. Now, it's a clashing of styles, and you certainly got one team that doesn't care about the strikeout pitcher. They're going to put it in play. And you've got these pitchers that are like, I don't care if you guys put it in play. They're not, for me, here, strikeout. And my instinct is to go with a potential top 5 pick in the draft in Cade Anderson and a guy who might be throwing it as good as Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson. I'm going to favor them over a lineup that's, done well in the Big 12. They haven't seen legit aces. I went back and looked for this to try to see what this West Virginia lineup has seen as far as like high-level draftable pitchers. And you just haven't seen much of that. They faced 2 relievers from Oklahoma State, and they didn't get a run off either one of them in 1 inning. They saw 1 reliever from Houston who struck out 6 in 2 innings. But that sample size is so small, I'm not even comfortable drawing anything from it. Now, if they had seen Liam Doyle, or they had seen Liam Peterson for Florida, or if they had seen, Jamie Arnold from Florida State, I would take some information from that as it results to Cade Anderson. They didn't see any of that in the Big 12. I looked at a top 200 list. They faced 3 pitchers on it this year. It didn't go great, but it was like 3 or 4 innings. So I don't draw anything from that. But I like LSU against this lineup. One thing I did know for sure is that Kentucky threw Ben Cleaver against West Virginia on Friday. If you don't know who Ben Cleaver is, LSU didn't play Kentucky. He is their freshman left-hander, big, tall, and they call him a Slim Reaper, big, skinny left-hander. And they knew that they didn't have an ace this year, so they put Cleaver in on Sundays, who was their best pitcher, to try to win a matchup right there. Like, we know if we throw him on Fridays, like, he may get beat by some of these guys in the league. I don't want him facing Zach Root and Cade Anderson and Liam Peterson and Hunter Elliott and Ryan Prager. Like, I'd rather just bump him back and put him on Sunday, and we have an advantage now. We'll take our lumps on Fridays, but we have an advantage on Sunday. Well, they threw him in the first game of the regional against West Virginia. And I'm going, okay, that's a big left-hander, good numbers. Like, what did West Virginia counter Cleaver with? What did their lineup look like? They put 5 left-handers in that lineup, and I would suggest that 3 of their 4 best hitters in that lineup are left-handed. You've got West, who I just mentioned, who has 10 home runs on the year, Sam White, and Armani Guzman, who was the most outstanding player of the regional. So it stands to reason they may put 5 left-handers in the lineup against Cade Anderson on Saturday. I know that Cade has given up some home runs to left-handers, but that hasn't been an issue over the last month. So that's an interesting choice, I think, at this point. Anderson and Ianson have been so good. Ianson's only allowed 21 hits and 7 walks in his last 35.2 innings. So that's a total of 28 base runners in 35 innings. Anderson has given up 33 base runners in the last 31 1/3 innings. That's some really, really tough stuff to deal with from a whip perspective. And I just don't know if West Virginia is in a big position to hurt those two guys, because really not many teams are. Here's another big deal, and we've talked about this a little bit. It got brought up on yesterday's show, and it does matter. Koki talked about it on yesterday, on Wednesday. West Virginia's defense has been poor. They made 5 errors in the regional final on Sunday, and over the weekend in Clemson, they made 9. Now, that's a little bit of an outlier. They're not making 9 errors most weekends, but they did finish 11th in the Big 12 in fielding percentage at .969. That's more than 10 points worse than LSU's defense. Prior to the regional, so before they made 9 over 3 days in Clemson, they hadn't had a multi-error game since late April, but they made at least 1 error this year in 41 out of 58 games. So far, far, far more often than not, they are making at least 1 error. And I'll just speak from experience. I've been in that stadium. I've watched infielders kick it around. It's hot. It's high pressure. You're not a great defender to begin with. LSU generally hits the ball pretty hard. You start kicking around, throwing it around a little bit, the box gets going, and that can be a significant problem. So that's just something to file away. Little Rock was not a good defensive team, and all of a sudden their shortstop and center fielder started putting on Tommy Mansky clinics out there. So you never know, but just statistically speaking, if you want to look at what West Virginia has been, they generally don't play clean games. And LSU often plays clean games. They had 1 error in the regional. I mean, they had 8 more. West Virginia had 8 more errors. And LSU played an extra game. That is a huge advantage to LSU. So that kind of puts it in summation. West Virginia's never been to the College World Series. They are in their 2nd consecutive Super. They did acquit themselves nicely on the same field LSU was eliminated on last year when West Virginia lost at Chapel Hill. Remember, if LSU had finished the deal against North Carolina, West Virginia would have come here. Now they are here. I feel like LSU is a significantly better team. I was listening to the D1 Baseball Preview podcast with Aaron Fitt, Kendall Rogers, Joe Healy, as well as Coach Rooney, Mike Rooney, and I forgot who said it. I think it was Mike Rooney said that he felt that this was the biggest mismatch among the super regionals. That doesn't mean anything. They would have said the same thing 100 times over against Stony Brook. Would have said the same thing against Coastal, I'm sure, as well. So we all know that, but in breaking this down and looking at trends, looking at statistics, looking at draft grades, looking at recent trends, looking at everything that you can look at, it feels like LSU should be a good spot. Now, it's easy for me to paint you a picture of LSU struggling with Kern on Saturday, of Cade Anderson giving up 2 home runs, which he has done a couple times, and of West Virginia winning that game. Like, I can paint that picture. I can paint Anderson coming out after 7 innings and LSU going to a bullpen guy who can't throw it over the plate. Like we just saw that last week. Baseball is funny like that, and anything can happen. But as I sit here right now, having done as much research as I could do last night and listening to folks talk about the game and kind of aggregating as much as I could together, I like LSU's matchup here, and I feel like LSU is a significant favorite in this super regional. That's a comforting feeling. LSU has not lost a weekend in that stadium all year long, and I certainly would hope that they don't start now. But West Virginia, again, as I said right at the top of the show, and as I'll bring you here to close things up, and we'll certainly talk about West Virginia a little bit more later. I want to talk more LSU on tomorrow's show. It's a solid team. It's not a scary team to me, and that's kind of the synopsis that I've given this club as they head to Baton Rouge to take on LSU. I said the wrong time yesterday. 1 o'clock first pitch on Saturday. I was looking at D1 Baseball's deal, which always does times in Eastern, and screwed that up. But you have enough time to correct that error that I made and not show up an hour late to the game. 1 o'clock first pitch on Saturday from the box. Our Thursday shows are brought to you by Sagrera Farms. Let's keep the baseball talk discussion going. Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra team, when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday shows brought to you by Sagrera Farm Premium Beef. Big news for the ride home from work today. I'm not going to be listening to the Frozen soundtrack for the 963rd time in a row.
Sure, you're happy about that.
I'm going to listen to Highway to Hoover because the new one's out. That'll be previewing the Super Regionals. Joe Healy, Mark Etheridge always do great work. Appointment listening for me, and Joe's always here with us on Thursdays. We appreciate his time here on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Joe, how are you?
Pretty good, Hunt. How about yourself?
Doing really well because LSU's still playing baseball, so that's good on a number of levels for me. One, I like when they win. Two, I like being able to talk about it and not transitioning to football in early June. So we're doing quite well. Let's go back to the regionals. Most disappointing exit for you among the SEC teams?
I think it has to be Vanderbilt, just when you consider they did so much work to get to the number one overall seed. They did a good job of kind of convincing us that this was a different team. This offense is better. The bullpen is deeper. We're so much more well equipped to win the postseason. And then their regional just kind of looked like what we've seen from Vanderbilt the last couple of years, where they've just totally fallen flat. And so it was just a complete reversal to type. So there were some other ones, but that to me was the one, because even Ole Miss, I mean, that's disappointing in the way it happened. You lose to a 4 seed, you push it to a game 7 and can't get it done. That's disappointing, but ultimately that's kind of what Ole Miss felt like, kind of a fringy host team that maybe got hot at the right time. Whereas with Vanderbilt, we were starting to think of them as a national title contender. And then lo and behold, they're lucky they even won a game there against Wright State to open it. And then they lose the next two. It's just a really, really rough exit for them.
Do you have a theory or like an opinion on why the SEC, quote unquote, struggled over the weekend? A lot of folks taking some shots on the internet. I kind of thought as a weekend of baseball, but do you have a theory on that?
Yeah, I'm mostly with you that it's kind of a weekend of baseball. Here's the other thing. I mean, it gets used a lot to say, oh, the SEC was actually overrated and like whatever. But to say it was overrated, that implies that someone else was underrated. And it's not like, okay, yes, we had some surprises with, Miami winning a regional and Louisville winning a regional in the ACC, but also like Clemson laid an egg, right? Like NC State didn't win that regional, didn't really challenge to win the Auburn regional. So it's not like the ACC just went out there and killed it. But I don't know, I think I have a couple of theories that aren't totally fleshed out. I think one of them, frankly, is that when you had two teams in Missouri and South Carolina that were historically bad, I mean, two of truly the worst teams record-wise in modern SEC baseball history, I do think the teams that maybe played both of those teams, they're probably 4 or 5 wins better than what they would be with an average SEC schedule. So did that push Ole Miss into hosting when really it should have been a 2, right? Or, whoever else. Did it just elevate some teams maybe beyond where they should have been seated? Maybe that's part of it. And I also think just in terms of the playing field in general, I think you and I have talked about this before. I just think that some of the advantages the SEC had early on in this era of college baseball have evaporated a little bit, where no longer are our teams getting caught flat-footed by the portal. No longer are the SEC powers the only ones really using NIL for baseball. Teams have kind of caught up to that. Now, it's still not a level playing field, but it's not like it was 3 years ago when LSU, Tennessee, and Texas A&M were really the only 3 programs that were actually putting resources into the portal and into NIL.
It's a crazy sport that's ever evolving for sure. Texas, we have not mentioned. They didn't play as well down the stretch. They didn't get out of their own regional. How much of that was UTSA? How much of that is Texas just kind of coming down to earth?
I think a lot of it's honestly UTSA. And I think Schlossnagle said as much in his postgame of hey, that's a real team out there. I think, Texas was probably an example, again, of a team that probably wasn't as good as what they were seeded. But kudos to them. They played really well for at least the first 3 quarters of the season. But UTSA, I mean, they're a team that I think they're good enough to have competed in better conferences, but because they were in the conference they were in, the RPI never got to a point where I think people took them seriously. They kind of just existed as this team that's, hey, it's good. And it's kind of like East Carolina sometimes, where it's yeah, they're good, but how good are they really? But then UTSA showed that they can play with anybody. And this weekend they've got a draw against UCLA, a place that is not going to have a lot of atmosphere, a place where it's not going to be a daunting place to go play. I think they've got a shot to win that series. So I think it's mostly UTSA, but also it's just a classic case of, what ailed Texas throughout the season just kind of came back and bit them a little bit, where, when they didn't get great work from their top line pitchers, they were kind of in trouble.
I didn't watch a lot of Auburn this weekend. I'm sure you've surveyed that quite closely. What did you make of their performance in a home regional?
Yeah, so I was there for the
Sure.
regional last weekend, and it was comprehensive. I mean, there was really never a single moment for Auburn where it felt like anybody else was winning that regional. They got pushed a little bit by the 4 in the opening game, but that lasted about 3 innings, and then it was just back to normal. And they kept Stetson and NC State at an arm's length in those games. So there just wasn't a lot of jeopardy in that regional, and that's a credit to Auburn. The key was, well, a couple of things. One is that they were getting something offensively from everybody in the lineup. But I think the bigger thing was they got good work from not only Sam Dutton, but also Andreas Alvarez, the freshman. They got good work from their bullpen. To me, that's going to be kind of the key for them, especially as they move forward with Coastal Carolina pitching staff this coming weekend that is very, very good and is good enough to shut down Auburn. Their pitchers are going to have to match Coastal 0 for 0. They pitched well enough for that last weekend, but this weekend might be a different deal.
Are they good enough to win the national championship, Auburn?
I mean, I still don't think so. I just get so nervous about, like, with Dutton, who's having a very good year, and I hate to even say this because it feels like I'm taking something away from him, but, you know, he's not out there blowing guys away. He's learned to be a very good pitcher, but is that going to translate, again, you know, as we get into Omaha on the bigger stages? And then too often, for my taste for Auburn, they have these disaster starts, like Cam Tilley against Central Connecticut in Game 1 of that regional. I can't remember if he got out of the first inning or not, but it was something like that. He got 3 outs, and they won that game. But in Omaha, you can't get away with that. And so that makes me nervous for Auburn, is they just too often have situations where they're going to the bullpen in the second or third inning. It's just something that in a regional where, you know, the hitter's park, you know you're going to score a bunch of runs. That's one thing. In Omaha, it's a different deal.
That looked like the good version of Arkansas over the weekend at Baum. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I've talked to a handful of coaches this week about them, just trying to survey what everybody thought. And you know, I've had coaches say, like, yeah, that's the scariest team in the country when they play like that. You know, it was they got what they needed on the mound. They got what they needed offensively. You know, they kind of battled through when things didn't go their way. In some cases, they actually got pushed a little by, like, North Dakota State and then by Creighton for a minute. And they just kind of, like, ho-hum, and they just kind of punched back. A big key for them is that they're actually getting deeper on the mound. Parker Coyle came back of late. He pitched well in the regional. Having Gackle back in the bullpen has been just a total game changer for them. So it feels like opposite of what Arkansas usually is at this time of year, where it feels like they shorten their staff where they only trust 4 or 5 pitchers. This year, it feels like the circle of trust is actually bigger than it was even a month ago.
Wake put a heck of a fight up there at Lindsey Nelson, but Tennessee advances. Your big storyline from that regional win for the Vols.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if Tennessee winning the way it did might actually be more helpful for Tennessee than if they had just waltzed through that regional, because there was something about getting to that Monday game and the crowd was just electric, and they had the whole Liam Doyle moment, and you had the memes of Tony Vitello in the dugout, you know, joking about how psycho Liam Doyle is. And so it kind of got things, I think it put some juice back in Tennessee. And I think it was reflected in the way they played. So I do, like I said, I do wonder if that's actually more helpful because there's a little more wind at their back. Whereas if they'd have played a relatively routine, kind of boring regional where they were never really pushed, that's great because you wouldn't have to use Liam Doyle in relief and all that stuff. But for a team that is so predicated on having energy in the building and some juice, maybe that way was actually better for them as they head into probably the toughest super regional matchup that's on the board.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I can't wait to watch some of that. All right, LSU, obviously pretty shocking on Sunday night. Got it done on Monday. Your concern level on the Tiger bullpen, that's kind of been a topic of discussion the last 3 days here.
Yeah, a little bit, but it kind of always seems to me that every time we start to get worried about that, LSU figures something else out and it gets better again. Like it's the bullpen has been a concern at various times this year, but it seems like it hasn't been a consistent through line. I actually worry a little bit more, honestly, about a potential matchup with West Virginia's pitchers. One thing they do well at West Virginia is they don't give up the home run. And if you get into a situation kind of like with Little Rock in that Monday game where, shockingly, and I still don't really know how to explain it, like Little Rock played its 2 best baseball games of the season in back-to-back days against LSU. And they were in that last game until Luis Hernandez and Jared Jones got a hold of a couple balls. And that's what tends to happen in the SEC when things get tight. Those offenses just kind of squeeze the bat tighter and just kind of, swing from the heels. And if this is a West Virginia pitching staff that's pitching well, if they're sinking the ball, that approach is not going to work. I mean, I think LSU's a heavy favorite here, but I can see a scenario where they kind of gum up the works, does West Virginia, by just having LSU pound the ball into the ground over and over and over again, which can frustrate teams like LSU that have physicality.
How do you feel like LSU's arms match up, especially the two starters?
I mean, obviously, if that's the thing. If Anderson and Ianson pitch up to their standard, up to their ability, there's no contest here. Like that's all she wrote. If they pitch really well, West Virginia is a scrappy team. They probably honestly overachieve their talent level. They're going to fight you. I seriously doubt they get run off the field this weekend. But this strikes me as the kind of super regional that ultimately, like LSU, as long as they don't allow WVU into ball games, I can't see LSU being all that challenged by this WVU team. But we've seen stranger things, such as Little Rock doing that this last weekend.
Yep, it's. I've never felt this way about a 1-2 punch for LSU. Certainly Skenes and Nola and Alex Lang, but a 1-2 punch that LSU has since I've been watching, it's been amazing. We'll see if those guys can carry the torch again this weekend. All right, let's go to the other SEC super matchups. We touched on the regional, but into the super now. Let's go back to Auburn. You mentioned Coastal's pitching staff. I know y'all have talked about that a lot over at D1 Baseball. Y'all say it's legit. Should Auburn have some trouble scoring?
I think they could. Now, what I think is going in Auburn's direction is that those freshmen have started to heat up again. Bub Terrell was the MVP of the Auburn Regional, so you like that. They do still have a couple of holes in the lineup. You can pitch to Derek Fabian, for example, but the other 8 guys are swinging it pretty well right now. So I think that helps offset some of it. But the change that Coastal made, they hired Matt Williams as pitching coach, formerly at South Carolina. And from one year to the next, it's a completely different thing for Coastal. And it's just a matter of they changed pitch mix for some guys. They changed, some deliveries on some guys. And lo and behold, like they're excellent in the rotation. They're excellent in the bullpen. I had a coach tell me the other day that, most of the SEC teams, probably outside of LSU, Tennessee, and Arkansas, perhaps, would trade their rotation for Coastal straight up. And that includes Auburn. And Coastal's not as physical as they've been in the past. So I'm not as worried about that matchup in particular, but I do think there is a scenario where this super regional ends up being like nip and tuck just because of the ability of Coastal Carolina to limit Auburn's big innings.
And then the big one up there at Baum, Liam Doyle in Tennessee, Arkansas, who played great last weekend. How do you handicap it?
I think, honestly, I don't mean to be overly simplistic. Because it's in Fayetteville, I like Arkansas. If it was in Knoxville, I think I'd like Tennessee. It's 2 of the 3 most talented teams in the country, LSU being the 3rd in that mix. The thing for me is so funny about this is just the way this tournament works, where, Tennessee ends up having that stretch where they lost a bunch of games at home, so they're seeded probably lower than they should be ultimately. And we have all these upsets in the regional round, and yet it's still just Arkansas and Tennessee, which feels like a CWS finals matchup. And instead, one of them is not going to get to Omaha. So it should be a lot of fun. I like Arkansas at home. I really like the way they're pitching it right now. I think once you get past Doyle, and even, Phillips is a little bit more hit and miss, but once you get past Doyle in particular for Tennessee, they're just a different team. And I think Arkansas is going to be able to take advantage of that.
Do you think Doyle will pitch the first game because he came out of the bullpen on Monday, or you think they throw Phillips and Wade? I know Tony's generally pretty regimented.
Yeah, my guess is because it's a Saturday start, I think they're going to go back to Doyle is my hunch. If it was Friday, maybe we'd have a little more of a question about it. But it's just so tempting if you're Tennessee to throw Doyle in game 1, because if you get that win, it just immediately puts pressure on Arkansas the whole rest of the weekend. And given the extra day of rest, I think that's probably the way they go is with Doyle.
We'll see. Enjoy the baseball, and we'll certainly talk next week, hopefully from Omaha, because I'll be up there.
All right, I'll see you, buddy.
Sounds good. And he's Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team. Do some awesome work. Highway to Hoover podcast. If you want some breakdowns of the Supers, they got you covered. We'll come back and close out the hour talking Derek Carr and money. $30 million next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
All right, closing out hour number 1 here, brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Beef. There's some odds out for Paul Skenes' next team.
Already?
Keep in mind, he's been with the Pirates about 1 year. 1 year about on the money. And he this year has only allowed 19 earned runs in 13 starts. Think about how good that is. 19 earned runs in 13 starts. So how many of those games do you think the Pirates have won, those 13 starts?
Not many.
5. They're 5-8. And so people are suggesting that the Pirates will now move on from Paul Skenes and trade him for more. And I'm going, okay, what are you going to trade him for? Prospects? Prospects work out like 20% of the time. And what you're trying to get out of a prospect is a great player on a cheap deal. That's what Skenes is. So if the Pirates were to trade them, and let me make this very clear. I think there's no chance of that happening. Like, no chance. Then you would essentially just suggest that you're not even trying. If you trade Paul Skenes, who might be the best pitcher in the sport, for 19-year-old prospects who inevitably will not become Paul Skenes, and you might get 4 for him, and one becomes a serviceable big leaguer, one becomes a bench player, and 2 completely flame out when they're 21 years old, well, you're not trying. You've got the greatest thing that you can have. The best thing you can have in all of professional sports, specifically those with salary cap, but even in baseball, if you're working off of a budget, which the Pirates very much are, you've got the guy on a tiny deal. And he's under control, and you don't have to deal with it. Paul Skenes isn't going to hold out. He's not going to sit there like an NBA guy and demand a trade. He's going to go pitch. Now, your ownership is never going to spend any money, so you have no chance of signing Paul Skenes long term. But you can cross that bridge 2 years from now. If the Pittsburgh Pirates ownership does not spend exponentially more than they ever have while Paul Skenes is on a rookie deal, pitching better than almost anybody in the country, then the MLB should step in and take the organization away. I know that's not possible unless there's some sort of legal issue that has to be dealt with that happened in the NBA. You can't just have the franchise taken away because you're cheap. But that's what should happen. Because it's a disgrace to the city, the fan base, to have a guy this great on a deal this cheap and just collect the ticket money when he pitches and sit on your hands and finish in last place with the best pitcher in the sport. It's a disgrace. And it's no surprise to anybody. The second the commissioner said Paul Skenes' name and put that hat up there and Paul Skenes was a Pittsburgh Pirate, you knew this was coming. This was inevitable because they're a disgusting organization that's run by cheap people that don't spend money or can't spend money. And either way, you can never win doing that. And this was always going to be Paul Skenes' fate. But the fact that they're already odds up on his next team 1 year into his big league service time is an embarrassment to that franchise. Now, hand up. I don't like that franchise. They're in my division. They're no threat, so I don't harbor the ill will that I do for Milwaukee or St. Louis. They're just the Pirates, whatever. We played them in one important game ever, and Arrieta threw a complete game shutout, and we won the playoffs, and the Pirates didn't. But this is pathetic. And for him to go out there and dominate every single start and to be significantly under 500, 5-8 when he starts, is gross. Gross. But that's where we are. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms, premium Angus beef every single Thursday. We got a lot to do in the second hour. Chris Blair in 20 minutes. We'll talk about the Saints and Derek Carr at the top of the next hour and him giving back $30 million out of the goodness of his heart. We'll pause for national headlines at Sports Center. We'll see you on the other side. Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com. If you're a business owner, if you're a CFO, risk manager, if you're someone who handles commercial insurance for the company that you own or work for, and you feel like you pay a lot for insurance on the property and casualty side, have you ever looked at a captive? That's just a question. If you have never been presented with the option of a captive, and not every insurance broker out there is savvy enough to handle captives or has a relationship or capability
to work with a captive, but the Highland Insurance Group can. And I believe, based on my 7 years in insurance, that's where this industry is going. That's where insurance is headed, is captives. If you are a business and you buy insurance and you've never been presented with a captive opportunity, the Highland Insurance Group needs to be on your list to make a phone call to. Jonathan Carbo and his team do it all the time. It's the Highland Insurance Group. Check them out online. HighlandIG.com, HighlandIG.com.